What's up everyone, Riley here, and welcome back to Overkill Reviews. If you haven't already, make sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and check out that dang Patreon. I'm so excited to be talking about this album today. I've followed this band so closely since the first album came out in 2017 that it could probably be considered creepy. I'm going to be seeing them in June at Fortress Fest in Scarborough in the UK with some other really cool bands like Panopticon, Fluisterars, who I've probably talked about 100 times, Wolves in the Throne Room, stuff like that. I'm going to have a full ass write-up about the whole thing afterwards over at hellbound.ca, but I digress. Let's get into it with Dödsrit's latest album, Nocturnal Will, out March 22nd, 2024 on Wolves of Hades. Dödsrit, or I believe it might actually be pronounced Dödsrit, is a posty, crusty, punky, melodic, gazy black metal project that hails from Sweden. It was originally a one-man project from our frontman Christopher Oster for the first two albums, which would be the self-titled as well as Spirit Crusher. Then in 2018, we added Jelle Sulsma on bass. We've got Brendan Duffy on drums and Gigi Maxouris on guitars. They've had 3 full lengths prior to this release, and the last one came out in 2021, and it was phenomenal. Phenomenal. So let's see how we feel about this new one. I find somewhere within the last decade, there's been a fairly undiscussed topic of this creation and nativity of this realm I find myself in quite often with newer bands that are fabricating or further fabricating what really is post-black metal into this more enhanced type of post-black gaze. And maybe it was born from bands like Deaf Heaven mutilating together with aspects of bands like Agalloch, or maybe it's bands like Alcest and Dissection having babies with bands like Altar of Plagues, but nonetheless, I find something really, really special in all of that. It's that incorporation of a punk element, maybe even crust, that simultaneously is fence riding this really high level of subdued, distorted reverb and mammoth-sized emphasis. This is the important part, mammoth-sized emphasis on layer building specifically to erect a very staple atmosphere of beauty or whatever it is that they might try to concoct, but without losing that loss of heritage in the caverns of what we recognize naturally to be the sound of black metal. First and foremost, I think that Dödsrit is one of those bands that is riding this forefrontal wave. It's this concept of subgenre cherry picking in order to make something different or fresh or new. And obviously this isn't a new concept to us. We have opened so many different doors and passages in the world of metal. It's kind of been this demented sort of heavy and loud video game, but every now and again, we get this amalgamation of sound and development where the chamber that we walk into is full of diamonds. And for me, Dödsrit is hands down one of those massive diamonds with this very unique but detectable familiar concoction of post-black gaze cherry-picking soup. And within all of that, and within Dödsrit, timing is everything. As many dabblings in the pool of post or atmospheric are, we are not here for the faint of heart, okay? We are not here for those songs that are 3-minute speedsters. Oh no, we are strapping ourselves in for a lengthy ride, and sometimes I've noticed that bands kind of lose themselves in this, where they could either cut the dull, or they could fill the gaps better, or by the end of all of it, we kind of haven't come to any sort of conclusion. But just to give you some reference points, there are 2 songs on this album that max out over 10 minutes. There's 2 songs on this album that go over 8, 2 that go over 4, and then we have a 45-second medieval pub bardism break called Ember and Ash, just for a little relief in all of it. And when I talk about atmospheric metal, more often than not, we think of that pre-established time or path or place. For example, we have bands that are atmospheric that designate those atmospheres to things like the woods or the water or lost lands, etc., whatever that may be. In this case, when I talk about atmosphere, it's more or less never suggestive to one point or a repetitive dynamic motion. It's more about that focus of building, creating, and ultimately crashing into this level of deliverance from all of those layers that took time to stack and thicken without suggesting to you where to be or what to think at the end of all of it, kind of leaving it up to your own imagination. And I really like that. And I think a really good example of this is the song As Death Comes Reaping. It starts with a really slow, kind of bare bones black metal riff. And of course, we get that added drum and a little sprinkle of distortion for added good luck. And then it withdraws and we are back to the bare minimum. And then when it picks it back up again at the 3.5 mark, we've got that D-beat, more punk focused, paced sound. Those screeching vocals come in. You're kind of balls deep in a song now, but again, we lose it and we withdraw right away. And then again, we're building it back up. But this time, there's this really epic heavy metal influenced sound with crystal clear toned guitars and a super, super sick solo. But by this point, we've gone back and forth here so many times, we're kind of just black metal edging ourselves and we're so pent up and we're ready to climax, essentially. But by the time that this fun, epic portion in the middle of the song starts to fade out, it gets juicier because what comes back in is such a pretty and unbelievably delicate sound, and these added layers of drum beat and low-toned bass sort of carry and overlap this delicate riff bird into nirvana. And by the 8-minute 30-second mark, the guitars are harmonizing and this section is now repeating itself, but it's adding it all back up again, piece by piece by piece as it goes on. And it makes for this ridiculously satisfying summit to hear when it all comes together in the end. And it is so impactful looking at that tower that was just built. Gives me goosebumps. That's the stuff that I love. And now you have these fragments from these songs, these pieces that you hold so much value to, and they would literally be nothing without that build of tension and incredible dance of dynamic and motion and concoction of aura. And sometimes, this is a great example, you can't just skip to the good parts. And my favorite part of all of that is I don't even want to, because all of those aspects that guide you there are so harmoniously complementary that it is the best use of my time and the best use of atmosphere that I could literally ever ask for. And with that, we're lightening the mood. So notably, out of all of everything, the first thing that I noticed on this album, immediately, in comparison to my relationship with previous Dödsrit, which is probably too well-knowing, was this introduction of these series that happen throughout the album of this really epic heavy metal influenced sound guitar riff to my ears. I swear to God, the opening riff on this album, very first song, the first thing I thought was Crypt Sermon? Key of Solomon, ? That type of sound. And of course, it transitions and rather really smoothly and well into that heavier, more windswept chasm of black metal, etc. But it's got this clean, toned, tidy, more hook and melody oriented riff appear all over the album. And it ultimately gives it an entire dash of new touch, a more energetic and lively feeling, and sort of a lighter nuance than the rest of Dödsrit's previous discography. Nocturnal Will song also opens up with a bangin', clean, crystal riff. The production on this thing is fantastic. It's just great. So what's my verdict? I love it. I love everything about it. I love the clean tones. I love the solos with the clean tones. I love the raunchier, more distorted tones. I love the production. I love the level of experimentation. I love the punk elements. I love the melodic elements. I love the black metal. I love that it's harsh. I love that it's post. I love that it's fun, but I love that it's grisly and grief-stricken. And I have no gripes here or bones to pick. I'm just kind of floundering around with like hard eyes popping out of my skull. I'm almost embarrassed, but they slammed it out of the park. Definitely a top contender for my album of the year. Like there's no doubt in my mind. So with that being said, I'm giving it a 5 out of 5 skulls on Overkill Reviews. Shout out! Toronto's Blackened Death Doomers Ischemic are dropping their latest release, Condemned to the Breaking Wheel, on April 5th. If you're into the world of loud, heavy, dark, and bleak, and really vulgar sounding, I say that in the best way, vocals, you're gonna keep your eyes out for this one. You're gonna listen to this. It's great. Then I have Bristol, UK's Oozlaga dropped the album Depth Dweller on March 1st via Intertidal Recordings. Oozlaga is a one-man black metal project that borders that line between raw black metal and some atmospheric elements, except there's a very prominent notion to energetic, fun, upbeat noise. So if that's your deal, make sure to give this one a listen. Then I have the raw black metal project Minima. They are from Greece. This is their new full length that comes out on March 20th, similar to Oozlaga. It's a one-man project, but it's definitely more on that noisy noise level of things. And I saw Minima back in Manchester in November, and I had a blast. So it was a great show. Check that thing out. Thank you for coming to hang out with me today, and I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you next time.